Hello and welcome. Today is May 27, 2025. Thank you for being here. I just got back from Dedham, Massachusetts, and I had a great day with the Karen Reed supporters. And even though it was hot and it was sunny, uh, it was really hot today. I'm exhausted from the heat more than anything. It was still a wonderful experience as always. I've been down to Dedham several times within the last year, and there certainly are not as many supporters out there as there used to be. It's also what I keep hearing from the other supporters that during the first trial, there were hundreds upon hundreds of more supporters attending, more supporters showing support outside the courtroom. But because of the revised buffer zone and the Massachusetts State Police sort of being militant with the buffer zone, it's discouraged a lot of supporters from attending. So, whatever the prosecution and Michael Morrissey and Judge Bev wanted to achieve with the buffer zone, they succeeded, unfortunately. But there are still diehard supporters who show up every day, even when there isn't a hearing going on. So let's look at these photos and videos that I took today from Dedham. I did not take very many, uh, but I'll show you what I did take. So this is just a photo of my GPS system showing that I'm in Dedham, and I arrived shortly after 6 a.m. Got really good parking. And this is the notebook that Scott McGinnis is hanging on to, and he intends to give it to Karen Reed when the retrial has concluded. And I did make a post about this earlier on my YouTube page. And this is the note I wrote, and it's sloppy. And when I wrote that I was so sleepy, I couldn't really spell, it was this. Uh, John O'Keefe's last name. I almost forgot an E and the apostrophe. So, you know, but it's more so coherent than otherwise would be in my sleepy state. And a photograph of the buffer zone sign and of the Dedham Superior Courthouse. And that's Tim. He was there by himself before the rest of us showed up. More of the Superior Courthouse. I believe that's Scott McGinnis walking across the street. And so I more so hung out with Scott McGinnis and Dina for a majority of the day, as well as several out of town supporters who showed up today. More photographs of the Superior Courthouse. So again, this is around 6:30 in the morning, probably. So court is not in session, therefore it's empty. No one's really here yet. The media are just starting to show up, but they're not really crowding the place yet. Um, this is in front of the Superior Courthouse as more supporters are beginning to show up. There's a video I took.
Yeah, it's always here first. I went to
All right, next clip. Another photograph as more supporters are arriving, and as increasingly more show up, the energy also increases, and people get more excited and more pumped. And for those of you who aren't aware or who are confused about the buffer zone, so this is directly in front of the Superior Courthouse. And the reason they are all permitted to have their signs and their clothing, their pink colors, is because court is not in session yet. The buffer zone only applies to when court is in session during the hours of the retrial. So in the morning, the supporters show up before the trial begins. And then after trial, sometimes the supporters will linger around the Superior Courthouse and demonstrate. So this would not be permitted trial, during the trial hours. If the supporters were to do this during the trial, they would be arrested. And we know that because Erica Wash was arrested last week just for wearing the hoodie that Microdots designed, the hoodie that reads Criminals Control Norfolk County. And so the buffer zone is essentially on both sides of the Superior Courthouse. It's like a barrier of 200 feet around the Superior Courthouse. So they have signs posted at each side of the courthouse. And this is generally where the supporters stand in the morning, right after they do the morning prayer. I forgot to mention that as before we all got here to this side of the buffer zone, we held a morning prayer at the Superior Courthouse, and then we all walked over to the buffer zone. And it's like the routine here. They do the morning prayer, and then they walk down to this part of the buffer zone to greet Karen Reed and her family as they are showing up. And usually they show up in this lane. If you guys haven't seen my posts, some more photographs of the supporters. And some supporters were from Australia that were there today. Some supporters were from Ireland. Some supporters were from Indiana, Michigan, Connecticut. So again, it's a case that has drawn international attention. This is a video of the Reeds, Karen Reed's family, her parents, and I believe her brother, Nathan, is also in the car.
There she is. Thank you. Good. Love you.
Nathan can drive him in. He drives him in. Some days.
I'll let it play one more time.
There she is. Thank you. Good. Love you.
All right. There's another video. I believe this one is of. Oh, this is just a video I took panning and looking at the supporters so that you guys could get a better feel.
Wednesday. We're all losing track of days. It feels like Monday. I'm so famous. I remember everything. Also, thank God I did make it through the traffic. Oh. Because I was killing it.
Okay.
And for anyone who's considering going to Dedham, Massachusetts, and if you're socially awkward or you have social anxiety, put all that to the side because these supporters will welcome you with open arms. The supporters welcome everyone. You know, they want you to be peaceful. They want you to respect, Karen Reed and the family. They don't want you doing anything outlandish, obviously, because as a Karen Reed supporter, you're also representing Karen Reed, who is being framed for something she did not do, and her freedom is on the line. So, aside from that, which is pretty reasonable to me, they welcome everyone with open arms. This is the video of Karen Reed's SUV driving by, but she did not roll down her window this morning.
All right, they got the light, so she's going to be going by fairly quick. Right by you now.
You're better off.
Not going to put her window there.
All right, and I did see the SUV stop closer to the courthouse, and Karen Reed did eventually roll down her window for a little girl who ran up to the window, and I thought that was really sweet. So this is at the Superior Courthouse as Karen Reed and the attorneys are entering the courthouse. That's Alan Jackson, and I believe Karen Reed is next to him. I didn't take good photos of them. I was at a distance. And that's Karen slightly looking over at our direction. So again, not very many photos this time. I've taken better photos of Karen Reed and her attorneys in the past. And then this is the other side of the Superior Courthouse in the other section of the buffer zone. And it's essentially a watch party because Brandy, the supporter, Brandy Magnoli and her husband, this is their vehicle, and they bring a TV and they hook it up to their vehicle, and then they have it connected to the sound system. And then Scott McGinnis also has his truck's on this side, and he also has the trial streaming and connected to a sound system. So we were all able to sit on the sidewalk, just feet away from the courthouse, watching the trial live. Yeah, so it's really cool. It's a big old watch party with Karen Reed supporters with like-minded individuals, and that's Brandy Magnoli. Again, this is she and her husband put this together. It's pretty awesome. And that's Scott McGinnis, his truck, and that's Scott McGinnis and all his signs, his flags. And again, he had the trial streaming live on his sound system, and it was pretty loud. You know, and Brandy Magnoli, God bless her, she would have to periodically sync the sounds between Scott McGinnis's truck and her vehicle, so that we were getting like a surround sound kind of live stream. It was really fun and really cool.
Discussions with anybody from the prosecution team.
This is just a demonstration of what it's like to sit there and listen to the trial live with the supporters.
About the changes with regard to the what I would call the Dighton route, the Dighton distance, and the total mileage. Do you know what slide I'm referring to, sir? Discussions with anybody from the prosecution team about the changes with regard to.
The video doesn't do it justice. It's actually really loud when it's played between both vehicles. It's pretty awesome. This woman, she's been there a lot before. I don't remember her name. I'm terrible with names, but she was across the street, also within the buffer zone, but across the street by herself. And she was just standing there with her sign, and it's a really good sign. Corruption, lies, and overtime on your dime. And she got a lot of honks. We all got a lot of honks today. The local Dedham community is very much free Karen Reed for the most part. Okay, and this is a video of Hank Brennan and Caleb Schillinger walking back from their lunch.
I can turn it down.
So, yeah. So I'm talking. It's funny. I was talking to Bob Alessi, David Unetti, and Alan Jackson.
See if I can zoom in.
I can turn it
I
down.
don't think it'll let me.
So,
Anyway,
yeah.
that's
So
them.
I'm talking. It's funny.
And I was told by the supporters that Hank Brennan basically goes to the same coffee shop every time, and for a while he would walk there by himself. But then the supporters started greeting him. They started saying hi to him, and then he started having a police escort. So this state trooper, this Massachusetts State Police officer on a bicycle, now supervises. He escorts Hank Brennan to his lunch every time, to and from every time. Hank Brennan has a bodyguard for his lunch every time. And it's not like the Karen Reed supporters are violent, right? That's the whole point of supporting Karen Reed, is because what happened to John O'Keefe was violence. What is happening to Karen Reed, the framing of Karen Reed, is violence. So obviously the supporters are not going to commit violence, especially against one of the most corrupt prosecutors in the country, right? A criminal prosecutor. It's like if you ever watched Better Call Saul, you know, that part when Jesse, or sorry, Breaking Bad. They're both great shows. That scene in Breaking Bad where Jesse tells Walt, like, you don't want a criminal lawyer, you want a criminal lawyer. That is Hank Brennan. Hank Brennan is a criminal and a lawyer, a criminal lawyer.
Bob Alessi, David Unetti, and Alan Jackson.
All right. And then this is a group photo. And I wish I could tell you everyone's names, but I would just botch it. But yeah, this was the larger group of the day. Again, not anywhere near as many supporters as I've personally seen when I've been in Dedham. And according to the supporters who were there during the first trial, they say the same thing, that during the first trial there were hundreds of more supporters there, and it's really dwindled down. But again, there are the several diehard, dedicated supporters who show up to Dedham every day, regardless of whether there's a hearing or not. And that's Dina Scott McGinnis. And again, the woman, I couldn't tell you her name. She told me her name. I forgot it. It's yeah. And that's Dina's car. She's got Free Karen Reed, Justice for Officer John O'Keefe, and Free Turtle Boy.
Yeah, that judge is whack.
And unfortunately, I did not catch this in time. But this, it's a we have a term for this in transportation. I'm just forgetting the name. It's like a cut off bus. It's a shorter bus. It's no more than like maybe 15 feet long. Anyway, she's driving this bus, right? And she stops traffic to vent to us about how much she knows that the prosecution is full of shit. And I wish I would have captured everything she was saying. I didn't know she was going to stay there and block traffic, but she was seriously blocking traffic. There were no vehicles in front of her. There was a line of vehicles behind her, and she stopped where she was and opened her door to yell at us in a good way and voice her opinions about this case. And she is very much saying Karen Reed didn't do this and they're all full of shit. and she knew some of the names of the people in the trial. So she's paying attention, she's watching it. I was very proud to see this. You know, and any other time I would be like, what are you doing blocking traffic, right? But I thought it was awesome that she did it. In this instance, I thought it was awesome because she's like, fuck it. I need to tell you guys, I'm so fed up about this trial, and I'm so glad you guys are here.
Have a good one.
Yeah, that judge is whack.
Have a good one.
She just said, yeah, that judge is whack. Again, I wish I captured more. Yeah, maybe next time. And this is the blanket. It's like a sheet that Dina puts on the roof of her car when she parks her car. And I wanted to show you this one because it's from Tom CPU. I did not see Tom CPU today, but Tom CPU is one of many Karen Reed supporters who have been there from the beginning. And several people signed this sheet for Dina, and Tom CPU was one of them. And Tom CPU wrote on Dina's sheet, "Thank you for all that you do for the movement, Tom CPU." And I'm fully aware that Tom CPU has and Boston Mike have expressed negativity and hatred for resistant to silence. But this right here is proof that there was a time that Tom CPU appreciated what they were doing. Just throwing that out there. And this is Dina's card from the front. So these are dedicated people, dedicated to the movement. And they show up as much as they can. And this is a magnet I received from another supporter who isn't able to go there all the time. She told me she works as well. But she said there was one time she met Karen Reed, and I think she was messaging Karen Reed actually. And this is what Karen Reed messaged her. And it reads, "This evil will end." So according to the supporter, these are Karen Reed's words. This evil will end. And so she made magnets like this to support Karen Reed using Karen Reed's own words. So I thought that was lovely. And she gave out these magnets. The supporter gave out these magnets to us who were there today. So that's about all I took from today. Not very many photos or videos, but it's what I could do. Again, I try to be present when I'm there with the supporters. But let's just watch this briefly so that we understand fully what is going on here and what will likely happen tomorrow. And for those of you who aren't aware, Dr. Judson Welcher essentially wasted everyone's time today, stating his opinions and using elaborate so-called laser imaging. Just all of it was just extremely unnecessary, and to me, still extremely speculative. Like again, I've told you guys, I've worked in public transportation. I've had Department of Transportation training. I've had training from the Department of Transportation, and some of that training involves curriculum from ARCA. Some of that training involves curriculum from the leaders in the transportation industry. And if you are an accident reconstructionist and you are working at ARCA, you know that you made it to the top. Like no engineer, no PhD at ARCA is working at ARCA and thinking, this is a stepping stone. No, typically you go through stepping stones before you get to ARCA, okay? ARCA is the cream of the crop, right? Like Dr. Daniel Wolf, he's set. He don't need to worry about any other career, okay? He made it to the big leagues. ARCA in the US is the big leagues. All right? Try to find someone as reputable. Try to find an organization as reputable as ARCA. It's difficult. And guys, the FBI relies on them. The US government relies on them. The Department of Transportation relies on them. Okay? It's a big deal to work for ARCA. It's not the Boy Scouts. It's not Aperture. It's ARCA. They are legitimate experts in the industry. They know what they're doing. But all Dr. Judson Welcher did today was essentially say, we've got these diagrams and we've got these really boring Excel spreadsheets, all to bore the jury to death with completely irrelevant key cycles and completely irrelevant timestamps, because ultimately ARCA already demonstrated that John O'Keefe was never hit by a vehicle, and Dr. Scorty Bello herself also determined that she could not determine what happened to John O'Keefe, right? There's virtually nobody in this entire case, no real expert in this entire case, who is saying that John O'Keefe was hit by an SUV. So when Dr. Judson Welcher from the prosecution says it is with engineering certainty that John O'Keefe was struck by an SUV, everyone paying attention to this trial is fully aware that Dr. Welcher is wrong. He is a paid expert, paid to give the prosecution and the jury an answer for the prosecution. That's it. Not real science, not real expertise. It is a narrative, and it is wrong. It is incorrect, right? So, despite all of Hank Brennan's attempts to completely mislead the jury and bore them to death today, to me, Robert Alessi still took it home.
Thank you, Your Honor. The point number one is the question of whether, based on reasonable degree of scientific or certainty, he has an opinion whether a collision occurred. I'm going to give a dramatic and accurate example that happens in courts all the time with equivalent. So, by analogy, if the issue is whether or not a defendant has stabbed an individual and caused a certain event, that is the ultimate question for the jury. That question is never permissible in a trial. By analogy, this is the exact analogous situation. The question of whether there was a collision is the ultimate question for the jury. That is why we are having this trial. The defense strongly asserts there was no collision, and there is substantial evidence to that. We are going to cross-examine Dr. Welcher. We are going to put in our own strong case to demonstrate no collision occurred. That's no surprise. It was in our opening statement. This witness cannot, by precedent for years, opine on the ultimate question that is going to the jury. I accept, subject to evidentiary issues, the two questions that a biomechanist always answers in these situations. Is the damage to the vehicle consistent with a pedestrian hitting the vehicle? And are the injuries to the individual consistent with being hit by a motor vehicle? Those are the questions that are permissible, not the collision question, it is resoundingly improper. In this trial, in any trial where that is the ultimate conclusion for the jury. Yes, an expert can offer opinions, but every expert is bounded by the extent of their opinion, and that opinion on whether there was a collision would invade the province of the jury and the whole purpose why we are here, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Brennan.
So what Mr. Lisi is arguing is that in their opening statement, they repeatedly invaded the province of the jury because they must have asserted vehemently over and over again there was no collision, over and over and over again. And he just told you that when his expert takes the stand, they'll have abundant evidence that there was no collision. This case is about the collision, but that is not the ultimate issue. The ultimate issue is manslaughter or mens rea for second-degree murder, not collision.
This is like a play on words for Hank Brennan, I guess, right? It's ultimately not about a collision, Hank Brennan. That's not the ultimate question here, Hank Brennan. Is that not why you and Dr. Welcher and all these other half-assed experts spent 70 grand on an exemplar Lexus SUV to demonstrate something that ARCA had already demonstrated, right? Why? Guys, again, this is taxpayer money that the prosecution is relying on, right? That Michael Morrissey and the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office is relying on. Hundreds of thousands of dollars to do testing, bullshit testing, to support a narrative, okay? It's not science. It's the furthest thing from science to be like, give us the answers we need to fool the jury into thinking Karen Reed did this. That is not science. They had science. They had the scientific results from ARCA. This prosecution had access to ARCA just like the defense did. This prosecution had access to the FBI documents just like the defense did. This prosecution is not after the truth. This prosecution just wants to win. As I keep saying over and over again for the last year, they just want to win. Hank Brennan just wants to win. He wants to make his bosses, his pimps happy, right? That's what this is really about. So when Hank Brennan gets pissed, when he gets his panties twisted up his ass, he's talking about him losing. He's talking about him having an issue with Robert Alessi making a perfectly legal argument. But that legal argument threatens Hank Brennan's narrative, right? So again, if this prosecution wanted the science, they would have relied on ARCA and they wouldn't be here. None of us would be here. I would not be making this video. I would be talking about some other government corruption, right? But because this prosecution wants to fuck around with taxpayer dollars, just like that woman wrote on her sign, on the taxpayer dime, and they just want to win, we continue to see these outbursts from Hank Brennan. He just wants to win. He's a baby. He's far from a grown man. He's a baby whining about a very valid argument that Robert Alessi just made. And for what? It's like Hank Brennan is saying, we've made it this far, Your Honor. We've made it this far. We can't turn back now. So let me just throw some more bullshit into the mixture, and let me combat a perfectly valid argument with bullshit. Because that's what Hank Brennan does best.
Collision. They don't get to define the prosecution's case. They do not get to define or limit the prosecution's opinions. They have no case law. They have no study. They have no jurisdiction or jurisprudence to say what we are limited to. He's entitled to an opinion. His opinion is not limited to whether or not.
I think in this moment, if you guys are paying attention to David Yannetti and Karen Reed in this little screen right here, I think the moment that Hank Brennan says, there's no case law, There's no study. They are handing over the case law to Robert Alessi.
Or not, the defendant struck Mr. O'Keefe. That evidence is obvious. It's not whether or not there's damage to the car or Lexus. That evidence is obvious.
Another reason for this outburst from Hank Brennan is that Robert Alessi said it's obvious there was no collision, right? And Hank Brennan is pissed. He is pissed that the media caught that. He is pissed that the world caught Robert Alessi's confidence, his scientific certainty that there was no collision.
Yes. He also is an enormous part of a biomedical engineer and an accident reconstructionist. He studied the tech stream data. They didn't, he did. And he's entitled to give an opinion. The tech stream data, based on fact and science and data, tells us when, if you put it together with other evidence, and where, when you contribute it with other evidence, this collision actually occurred. We don't have to play peekaboo and close our eyes to the reality of the fact that the evidence supports the conclusion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty that the defendant struck Mr. O'Keefe with her Lexus in front of Fairview Road. I am not interjecting the defendant.
You guys see that? In front of Fairview Road. In front of Fairview Road. You see, he was so adamant in his argument. He was so adamant about getting the defense back, with his counter narrative. So adamant that he had to be precise. She backed into John O'Keefe in the front of 34 Fairview Road. Although he didn't say 34 Fairview. He said Fairview Road, right? Again, guys, this is a counter narrative. This is Hank Brennan pissed off that Robert Alessi said all of that on the record for the world to hear. And now he has to counter it with his bullshit narrative. Hank Brennan's lies have to win.
I always refer to her car, so it is sanitized, her Lexus. I've been careful about that. I don't have to, but I'm very careful about it.
Total bullshit. I don't have to, but I've been very careful. Total bullshit. All those motions hearings before the retrial began, multiple instances in which Hank Brennan stated it as a fact. He seldom used the word allegedly. Like, it's too late now, Hank Brennan. It's too late now to say you've been careful. You've been far from careful. You've been reckless and on purpose. You want to destroy this woman's life and to destroy John O'Keefe's chance of any real justice just so you can win.
He is relying on the tech stream data, the physical evidence, his independent studies. He is allowed to offer an opinion about whether the injuries are consistent with the damage to the car, whether the damage to the car is consistent with the injury to Mr. O'Keefe. And he's also allowed to answer, in his opinion, the issue of a collision, putting aside the fact that that was emphasized and repeated in the opening statement, and it's going to happen again when other people testify. It's not our fault that ARCA didn't testify or look into the tech stream data, or they don't have an expert for it. It doesn't belittle or limit that evidence. We expect it.
So such bullshit twisting of facts here, right? It's not our fault that ARCA didn't do this. Again, guys, you see how how Hank Brennan repeatedly views ARCA as some kind of Boy Scouts, as some kind of intermediary organization, something unreliable and unscientific. He is just pissed off that ARCA knows the truth. The FBI knows the truth about what happened to John O'Keefe. And he has attempted to downplay ARCA so much as if to discredit them or to denounce them, and to no avail. To no avail, Hank Brennan, because you are fooling no one but yourself with your bullshit facts.
To ask Dr. Welcher, does he have an opinion to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty whether the defendant's Lexus collided with Mr. O'Keefe on January 29, 2022, around 12:32 a.m.? That is one of the opinions we're going to ask him. Nothing to do with the ultimate opinion of guilt or innocence, or whether it's manslaughter or there's mens rea for second-degree murder.
And what such hogwash. Again, guys, listen to the patterns here. Hank Brennan wants to say the collision is not the most important aspect of the case, when it absolutely is. It is the prosecution's case. The prosecution's case is, did Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe? Actually, their narrative is Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe, right? That's the prosecution's case. But he wants to pretend that the collision is not that important to them. It's total bullshit. And now he's implying that, but very casually, Your Honor, very casually, we want to put Karen Reed at 34 Fairview at 12:32 a.m., and we want this guy to provide his expert opinion very casually, Your Honor, not a big deal. Like, it has nothing to do with her guilt or her innocence. Who the hell are you talking to, Hank Brennan? Who are you talking to? Who are you trying to convince here? What the hell is this?
What was your second? You said that's one of the opinions you're going to ask him. What else are you
I
looking
will
at?
also ask him about the consistent with, whether the injuries are consistent with.
With what?
I'm going to ask him after this part about the difference between a clip or a side swipe as opposed to a full-on injury, pedestrian collision from a front or back of a bumper. And there are further slides to emphasize that point. And so there'll be an opinion regarding that as well.
And you,
Consistency with a side swipe or a clip.
okay, so this is not the end of Dr. Welch's testimonies.
So you see, guys, this is Beverly Cannoni almost like shitting herself that this is not the end of Judson Welcher. This is not the end. The torment we all survived today, listening to this bullshit, listening to this so-called scientific demonstration. That wasn't enough. The 8 hours they gave Dr. Welcher today, that wasn't enough. They want to bring him back tomorrow to bore us all some more. And even Judge Beverly Cannoni is reacting to that.
He's just moving on to another area.
It's close, but it's not the end.
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
You see that? Do you hear that sigh? Okay, she usually does that for the defense. Okay, guys? Judge Beverly Cannoni usually sighs like that for the defense. She is sighing like that because we have all been beat down. We've all been dumbed down by Dr. Welcher's testimony today. Okay, we have all had enough, including Judge Bev. And Hank Brennan wants to put us through some more.
Your Honor, here's a case. Attorney Brennan said, so the case, well, here it is. Commonwealth v. Coleman, 366 Mass 705. And it stands for the proposition exactly that I articulated. I won't repeat it. Secondly, Your Honor, we practice what we preach.
That to me is like sticking it to Hank Brennan. We practice what we preach. And if you're paying attention to what Hank Brennan has done since he started in this case, then you know exactly why Robert Alessi is saying that.
I have the ARCA report right in front of me. And I have the report of.
Is that a new one or is that
This is the new one.
okay.
It's also, the old one is the same. So either one is the same. They do not, Mr. Brennan incorrectly said what our experts are going to do. I don't know why he did that because he has these in writing. Neither Dr. Wolf or Dr. Rentschler.
But he does that. Doesn't Hank Brennan do this? Isn't it like Hank Brennan to have the facts in his possession, to have everything the defense has filed in his possession, but to take it upon himself to give the judge a bullshit narrative that has nothing to do with what the defense filed, has nothing to do with what is in Hank Brennan's possession? You see, Hank Brennan doesn't rely on facts even when they are in his hands. He still pushes narratives. Hank Brennan relies on narratives. And again, that's how you know he must have studied propaganda.
Talk about a collision of conclusion, it's consistency. So those two questions I said in sidebar. And for reference, Your Honor, for the most recent is page 15. There is no.
I don't have that report, so I'd like a copy of that report.
Your Honor, a copy, and I also, Your Honor, refer Your Honor to ARCA's existing report, which I'm going to do from memory. I think it's February of 2024 that was done for the U.S. Department of Justice and FBI, where they basically said and gave opinions on those two items I spoke to you at sidebar. So Attorney Brennan is incorrect when he says what our experts are going to say or not. We've already committed in writing to what they're going to say. We're consistent. We practice what we preach.
All right, so we will discuss this tomorrow before we start. I'll tell you my ruling tomorrow before we start. I need to go back and see what exactly came in to evidence today. All right.
Right. So Judge Bev is going to scrutinize the new report from ARCA, and she's going to compare it to the existing report from ARCA that she's had for the last 2 years, right? And so when she says, I'm going to look at everything, she is scrutinizing ARCA. Remember, Judge Bev has convinced herself and pushed this narrative alongside the prosecution that the defense lied about ARCA. The defense lied and misrepresented their communications with ARCA, right? Judge Bev has repeatedly said that the defense did that deliberately. And the prosecution could commit murder in the courtroom in front of Judge Beverly Cannoni's eyes, and she still would not have grave concerns for the prosecution like she does when the defense is accused of something they didn't do, or they are accused of something and whatever they're accused of is blown completely out of proportion, right? So we all know, those of us paying attention, that Judge Bev has sided with this prosecution. You can't tell me any differently. And you can't tell a majority of people paying attention to this trial. You can't tell them differently. Judge Bev has sided with this prosecution. What are the chances Judge Bev is going to let Hank Brennan ask that question, that engineering certainty question? What are the chances she's going to ask Dr. Welcher that question tomorrow?
All right, so I'll see you in the morning.
Yeah. Total integrity, this judge and the prosecution. Total integrity. Nothing for us to worry about here. It's a show. What she's more so going to do is she's going to compare the reports so that when Robert Alessi says they're the same, you know, the new report and the old report are pretty much the same, she's going to hold Robert Alessi to it, right? And Robert Alessi doesn't lie, right? So she's not going to be disappointed, but she's still going to allow the prosecution to ask Dr. Welcher that question. Why? Because Judge Bev has sided with this prosecution. So to everyone who watched the trial today, I apologize for the dumbing down that you experienced because of that bullshit demonstration for hours, an unscientific demonstration, which to me was purely speculation on Dr. Welcher's part. I've watched so many trials, so many criminal cases, and I've never seen anyone bullshit the jury that much, using language that makes it seem like they know what they're talking about. But when you really look into it, it is so unscientific that it makes you fall asleep. It's so unscientific and so like monotone too. Like his voice alone. Like I was telling the supporters today, like he's the cure for insomnia, you know? Just give him 5 minutes and you're out. It's just it was an entirely ineffective testimony today, an entire waste of a day and waste of taxpayer money. Again, the $70,000 Lexus SUV, the exemplar SUV, for what? When, again, the scientists, the real accident reconstructionists, the real biomechanical engineers, they already figured it out. The US taxpayers already paid to find out what happened to John O'Keefe, and they paid for it through the FBI. But you see, guys, hundreds of thousands of dollars with this prosecution, hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxpayer money, so that they never tell the truth about what happened to John O'Keefe, and so that they never tell the truth about Karen Reed. Thank you for watching.